So today we're going to continue reading about the position of women, and we're going to begin with the definition of protection. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvise Sasanyavari Paschacheda Satai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And just this. Women are one of 5 groups that in a traditional Vedic society require protection. Such protection means acknowledging value. We protect what we know is valuable. The protection of the Brahmanas maintains varnashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. The protection of the Brahmins means that the Brahmins will be heard. They'll be respected. They'll have influence. So that's a kind of protection. Interesting, definition of protection. You're protecting their occupation. You're protecting the environment by which they can flourish in their occupation and by which people will benefit. If we lose respect for Brahmins, then society suffers, and the Brahmins can't perform their function. 2, the protection of cows maintains the most miraculous form of food, milk, for maintaining the brain and also for yajna. And for the well-being of society, if cows are protected, society is in a better place. And Prabhupada said that all the problems that we face in society are because cows aren't being protected. And if cows were protected, every problem would go away. That's very interesting, this correlation of cow protection. Outside of India, it's not understood. I don't even know how well it's understood in India anymore. But the idea that all problems of the world could be solved by protecting cows doesn't have to the logical material mind, a cause and effect relationship. But Krishna is pleased with the cows, and the ill treatment of the cows has so many negative effects on society. War is one of the reactions, Prabhupada said. It was caused by slaughter of cows. So it's interesting. Number 3, the protection of women maintains their chastity, by which we get a good generation of children for peace and progress of life. So recently I was reading, one scholar said that unless the second generation within a religious organization, or the majority of them, take to that religion, the religion doesn't have a future. Which is quite interesting, because we normally think the future is based on other things. Management, fidelity, obviously, fidelity to Prabhupada, expanding the preaching, maintaining book distribution. And this is interesting. I mean, what he's basically saying, whether we accept it or not, but Urmila also said the same thing. So apparently this is statistically proven, or historically proven, or both. I guess if it's historically proven, it's statistically proven, that unless the second generation takes up the religion and moves it forward, it doesn't have a chance of surviving, or not a good chance, or statistically it won't survive. It's interesting. And then what's interesting is that ISKCON doesn't operate on that paradigm. We operate on the paradigm that sustainability is based on other things, which obviously it is, but this seems to be the prime factor, or a major factor, which is interesting. So, protection of women, that's in Bhagavad Gita. If women aren't protected, they'll be exploited. When exploited, the progeny will be unwanted, uncivilized, uncultured, and such children will create a world which is more or less like the world we see today. Hare Krishna. They'll create a world like we see today, where there's, like you see on high levels such a lack of integrity, and you wonder, how could that be? Yeah, Varna Sankara. Children are raised in an uncultured way, and this is what you get. This is what you can expect. So, there are other reasons to protect women that are maybe specific to Kali Yuga that were not as prevalent. I can't say for sure, but when Manu Samhita was given, but men have a tendency to exploit women, whether it's sexually or take advantage of them, just in ordinary affairs, thinking that they're weaker or more vulnerable. Because every time my wife goes to get the car fixed, they tell her like things wrong with it that they wouldn't tell me. That's my observation. I could be wrong, but it seems like it. They tell me, and if it's not important, I know something about cars, so she doesn't know that much. So, sometimes they take advantage of ignorance. So, women know more about certain things, men know more about other things. But what we're finding today in Kali Yuga, which is so unfortunate, that now the women have to be protected from the men who are supposed to protect them, like their fathers and their husbands. And in many cases, the fathers and husbands are the problem. And they're the ones that women have to be protected from, which is, it really doesn't get much worse than that. So, how does this play out in terms of ISKCON and protecting women? It means giving them all opportunity to do service, to participate in all the programs, and not exploiting them, basically. But specifically, in society in general, the protection of women creates an environment where kids are wanted and raised that way. And so also, in our society, we don't want to marry women to men who are not qualified. That would be part of protecting them. Being discerning, and if they're making bad choices, then protecting them would be to let them know that this is not a good choice. Sometimes it's difficult to tell, even for men, and it's our duty to help them. And there's two more. The protection of children gives the human form of life the chance to prepare for liberty from material bondage. So Prabhupada said, the duty of parents is to ensure that their children become pure devotees. And usually, the duty of parents, at least the way parents take it, is to make sure their children are materially well off. And spiritual may be neglected to one degree or another, or entirely neglected. And Prabhupada is not even saying that it's the duty of the parents. That's a given. It's obvious that, but it's overly emphasized now to the sometimes extinction of spiritual well-being. But the main function of the parent is to ensure the child becomes a pure devotee. And Prabhupada said that many, many times to devotees who had services that they were finding difficult to do because they were taking care of children. And Prabhupada said, your main service is your children. And the last, the protection of old men, gives them a chance to prepare themselves for life after death. So creating an environment for elderly people so that they can leave their life in Krishna consciousness, taking care of them. If you live long enough and you're not healthy, you have a difficult time taking care of yourself, or you may not be able to. So obviously, protection of elders on a physical level may be necessary, but also facilitating them in their spiritual life, just like we facilitate the children. So here's a quote from Prabhupada. The child must be taken care of, that is good. Similarly, woman also. But just like old man, like us, I am taken care of. That is civilization. That is human society. Taking care of these 5 people is the defining, or one of the defining elements of a civilized society. And so when you have couples who divorce or couples who fight, it has a horrible effect. Couples who have a toxic relationship, it has a horrible effect on the children. And so parents, part of your service to your children is to get along. Because when you don't get along, children who grow up in families who don't get along are often have problems, psychological or emotional problems. And that can be statistically demonstrated. And if you want, during class this morning, the class on marriage, I can give you the statistics. It can create traumas for the kids when the parents divorce. And these traumas affect them later in life. Yes?
But what is better? When you have a toxic relationship with your husband, for example,
staying together.
You keep the family, or you destroy
No,
the
it's
marriage?
better. She's asking what's better when you have a toxic relationship. Keep the family going in a toxic relationship or divorcing. They're both bad. So the first line of defense is solve the problem. If you can't solve the problem, probably, yeah. Probably, I've seen some cases where the kids were better off once the divorce was there because there was violence in the house. So it was really bad. So, it may be something you have to consider on a case-to-case basis. But, the point is it's a responsibility. And I think a lot of people entered marriage for material enjoyment, not for responsibility. And so when the enjoyment's not there, they become irresponsible and they don't want to do it. And so their whole expectation was wrong from the very beginning. And when Prabhupada's saying things like you should only have sex to have children, that kind of diminishes the whole romantic idea and puts more of the responsibility of like raising good children. Isn't it obvious? You're only having sex to raise good children, not for material enjoyment. And it's an ashram, and the purpose of an ashram is to advance. But a lot of people don't enter it that way. So therefore, when there's a problem, which basically means I'm not happy in this relationship, then often the thought is get out of the relationship and then I'll be happy, rather than, and a lot of people don't know how to make it better. Or they think it's too much trouble to make it better. I won't be happy, I don't like this person, I don't like this man anyway, I don't want to make it better. That's not traditionally how marriages were looked at. In fact, in traditional society, when most people were living off the land, you needed children to help you. And so when a man was looking at a wife, he was looking at a woman who could work and who could bear a lot of children, more than some, very attractive woman, slender, and he didn't want the slender, he wanted the big fat one. She could work harder. So it was a whole different program, and it was also how it would affect the community, especially in Chatra families, how the merging of dynasties would be affected. Was it good? So it was less of a romantic thing and more of a broader consideration. And so now it's more of a romantic thing because we're bombarded by Hollywood, Bollywood, music, all about romance. So we think that's what it's all about. Once you get married, you realize that's, a small part of it. And you redefine romance as just getting along in a healthy relationship. That's, if I can sit, like one of our god sisters who's an astrologer, she said, if you're a Brahmin and you're married, what's romantic for you is to sit down with your wife and your family and hear and chant. That's romantic. That's how you see romance, because you're not in passion. So I think a lot of devotees don't understand that, and so they go in with romantic expectations and want to become like Cinderella or something, or Prince Charming, and that's not really what you'll see in any traditional marriage, and it's not what you're going to see in the Bhagavatam. Yes?
What about the astrological factor? I mean, we've seen that sometimes, devotees come together with that mood that, okay, we got to serve, we have responsibility, but somehow, even though they are not entering in the mood of romance and all, I mean, some might be there, but for some reason they can't get along, and then ultimately they find out astrologically. So what do you think about?
Oh, they find that they were incompatible?
Yeah.
It's not what I think. I can tell you what other people think. From astrology, the best marriages are not always the most compatible. Not saying that, if there's huge incompatibilities, you shouldn't consider that before marriage. And statistically speaking, same thing, research. The best marriages are the people who work on their marriages. Those are the best. The people who work on the relationship have the best marriages, compatible or not. Compatible marriages often fail because people don't know how to deal within a relationship. So compatibility makes it easier, apparently, or is an advantage. But if you don't know how to work in a relationship, it doesn't work. And one of the studies shows your average couple disagree on about 75% of things. I think it's just the nature of people. Now, you may say, but with my friends, it's not like that. Yeah, well, you have lots of friends and you can choose them. And you have lots of friends who aren't your friends because you chose them not to be. So I don't think we can compare that, but you didn't have hundreds of women to choose from. And so just the odds of finding a woman that's somewhat compatible and marrying, the statistics say that, you're not going to agree on most things. Or maybe it was 2/3. Most things you'll disagree on. So, but the people who have successful marriages are not the ones who necessarily agree on things. They're the ones who can manage the disagreements and take advantage of the agreements. Isn't that interesting? So, this is important because when they say generally when there's incompatibility, people will use that as an excuse for a divorce. Which means they don't know how to have a relationship, they don't know how to work on it. And, they'll say things, well, we're just so different. But that's not how you make a relationship work, by being negative. Right? Yeah. So, but the point is, if we are to protect women, then one of the things that men must do is learn how to be responsible to make the marriage work. At least that's their side. They take 50% of, the woman also. But if we're talking here about protection of women, that's an aspect of protection. Because how can you have good children unless you have a good husband? Not only who just provides, but provides friendship, understanding, empathy, service, and so forth. So, a lot of the protection of women relies on the husband. He's one of the protectors, the son and the father, but the father has an easier job, the son has an easier job. It's more obvious, and it's just easier. It's easier to be a son and a father than it is to be a husband. So the husband has the harder job. But that's, so, if a man says, well, we don't get along, I want a divorce, but then you're giving up on your duty to protect women, and that's one of the basics of Vedic society or any civilized society. So, now you're leaving your wife unprotected. No, well, I give her money. Okay. That's okay. That's good. You don't have a choice. The government's forcing you, or maybe you decided to do it, but better is to figure out how to make it work. Now, obviously, in some cases, it doesn't, but at least every effort should be made to make it work. And then, if there's divorce, then that's called sannyas. That's how it happens, not you get married again. And sannyas means the wife is in agreement. Yeah, this would be the best thing. He provides for her, he has some funds, that she'll be okay, or she has employment, and they're assured that everything's good, then he does it. So that's also protection of women, that if he takes sannyas, he makes sure there's a son, or there's some fund, or parents are there, something's there. So that's the duty of the man. So you may like your wife, or you may not like your wife so much, but still protection it's your dharma, and so maybe you entered marriage with expectations that were false, and now you say, I don't like my wife, but it's just that you had false expectations or unrealistic expectations. It's not her fault. Or maybe you thought she would make you happy, and you're not happy. Yeah, but happiness is your job, not her job. And so you're relying on her or relying on him to make you happy, and then you want to divorce because she didn't make me happy or he didn't make me happy. No. It's actually, marriage is not ultimately to make us happy, it's to help us become Krishna conscious, and that's what will make us happy. And so if you drop the Krishna consciousness and just look at it from a material perspective as happiness, then you could easily be let down. Maybe also, if you go to your astrology, you can find that in this life you may not have the best marriage karma. So whoever you marry, it's going to be, if that's your marriage karma, it doesn't really matter who you marry, it's going to be like that. Some a little better, some a little worse, but in general, you're going to have to find your happiness from something else. It's not going to come from the family. Or maybe it is going to come from the family, and maybe your marriage is very seamless and much easier than other people. But whatever the case, the duty of the man is protect women. So we have a question or a comment from Vrindavaneshwari. Some devotees are not happy and don't like their wife, but feel responsible to take care of her and keep the marriage. But they solve the problem keeping friendship with many women as possible, as many women as possible. Writing, flirting, telling lies to the wife that he is just preaching, taking advantage of her faith in him. What do you think of this kind of escape? Is this a personal biography? Okay, you don't have to answer that question. I was thinking this morning, we're giving a workshop, and I was on marriage, and I was studying a little bit this morning, and I was thinking of this paradigm. I'll tell you a story. It's a true story, and I've heard this more than once. I don't want to mention where I was because some of you might know who the couple was, but I was in a country, and I asked the husband, could you ask your wife a question? And he said, no, I haven't spoken to her in a year. And they lived in a house which was probably 400 square feet. So 400 square feet is not much. And you are certainly. And I said, well, how do you talk to your wife? He said, I tell my kids, I say, ask your mother what time is dinner. Yeah, this is not the first. I mean, these were not American families. If this were America, they would have been divorced a long time ago, or they would have gone into therapy and solved it, or counseling. But so what Vrindavaneshwari is saying is that sometimes you have these relationships where they stay together out of duty, but the relationship is totally dysfunctional. And so, in essence, they're divorced, but they're just living together. So, I would say the answer is the same thing, that, as we answered before, it's better to fix it, but probably being divorced is better than allowing him to mess you up and mess up the children if you have children, or if it's not you, it's someone. The thing is, there are ways to solve these problems, and men have a certain nature. And for a lot of men, that nature is not conducive to good relationships with women. And they have to learn how that nature is getting in the way, and how women don't respond to this kind of behavior, or how they respond negatively to certain kinds of behavior that's natural for a man. I'll give you an example. In the marriage course we took, they said there are 4 things that destroy a marriage: criticism, defensiveness, condemnation, and stonewalling. So criticism is basically you're attacking the person, rather than just saying, we have a problem, because we're always late, and then, something's wrong with you, like, why are you always late, as opposed to, what can we do to get on time? So that's not criticism. So there's a tendency to criticize, and then condemnation, which is basically, once you get, it's criticism on steroids. Once you get to that level, it's pretty much guaranteed your days are numbered before your marriage falls apart. So condemnation is when you are taking a position of superiority, and then you're just laying into the person, sarcastic, and just, you're taking this role that I'm right and you're wrong, and everything I do is right and everything you do is wrong, which I think a lot of people have experienced that in marriage. They feel that way. And defensiveness is just not taking responsibility. So, you say, we're always late, is there anything we can do to be on time? Well, sometimes you're late also, and, you don't help me with the dishes, so what do you expect? It should be, okay, what do we have to do? Yeah, I'm sorry, it's true, I am late. I think I need your help. I think I take on too much. So they're admitting the responsibility and they're looking for a solution. And the last one is stonewalling, and the reason I brought this up, stonewalling is when you build a wall around yourself. So someone's talking to you and they're talking to a wall, and you don't want to talk, and you don't even look at them, and you just kind of ignore them. So the reason I mentioned this, which is so interesting about this, is stonewalling is done 85% by men. Women tend to want to talk more. And stonewalling is done when you get really, really agitated, and you can't think straight, or you think if I say anything, it's going to be bad. So it's interesting that it's done by men. That means men have this nature that if there's something that's unpalatable to talk about, or they're being attacked, they shut down. Or they go aggressive, or they shut down. So men have to learn that. Okay, that's your nature. You do that. Now, what do you do when that happens? You see? But most men, they just think, no, my wife's on my case and I can't talk to her and I don't want to listen to her anymore. But then I would ask, why is she on your case? What are you doing? And a lot of men don't think like that. They just think, well, she's supposed to be the wife and she's supposed to be nice. Like in forgiveness, for example. A lot of times a person has done something in response to what we did, but we think they initiated it. We don't realize that I said something or did something that caused them to act that way. And we think, oh, this person's bad, I can't forgive you. What you did was wrong. But we don't realize I instigated it by my behavior, by my words. So what a lot of men need to understand, my wife is this. You can switch this around. Women understand this also. My wife is this, my wife is that, my husband is this. What are you doing? Are you doing anything to make them like that? Would they be that way if they were married to another guy? Or would he be that way if married to another woman? These are important questions. So you can learn these things and say, oh, now I see. If I would have just done this, she wouldn't have been upset. Or if I would have just listened, I didn't listen, or I fought, I defended myself, I was critical. Oh, if I didn't do that, then the problem would have been solved. But we think, oh, it's incompatibility. Or a man thinks, it's just the way I am. It's true, in many senses, it is just the way you are. But knowing that if this is just the way you are, it doesn't work for your wife or your husband, then you change it. So it'll work, because the goal is to make it work, rather than say, it just doesn't work. So it's interesting, some men, or majority of men, have certain qualities that make it really difficult for their wives. And then they say, my wife's always criticizing me. Okay, maybe she is, but the point is, are the criticisms valid? Now, wives, you shouldn't always criticize your husband. There's a way to express your upset without attacking him. So don't attack him, just talk about the problem. This is a problem, I need your help to solve it. I have too much to do, and I get upset, And could you help me, rather than just saying, you never help me, you're just lazy. And so there are ways to do it. There's ways to communicate. And so both men and women need to learn this. But from my study, it seems men in general are more challenged. They're more dominant. And then you have another interesting dynamic, which I was thinking about this morning, and it was a little concerning, and it's also concerning to talk about it because I think some people would have problems with this. But I was thinking from Nectar of Devotion, the 6 loving exchanges, which are basically 3, but they're 3 going both ways. So we say 6 loving exchanges, it's 3, giving prasadam, giving gifts, and revealing one's mind. And if you're a psychologist or you've studied anything about relationships, you understand relationships are complicated, and you understand that there's so much to learn about relationships. And so, but what is our Shastra saying about relationships? It's saying there's 3 things you do. And so someone may say, well, that's all we have to learn, and anything beyond that is just, it's not representing Prabhupada, it's not Krishna conscious. So it's just interesting that, this exchange is a general exchange of how we show affection with devotees. But there's so many subtleties to it. Okay, I'm exchanging prasadam. I just throw it on the floor and say, eat it off the floor? So there's obviously subtleties, in how we do everything. And so much interaction within the process of those 3 loving exchanges. Exchange, yeah, we should reveal, exchange. But that means you have to listen without judgment. Well, it didn't say that there. But, so there are details to it, and the details aren't there, and the details have to be presented. And so if we just say, no, this is what it says, just do this, I say, okay, but how do I do it? So there are many more details we have to learn. So, this is the Vedic paradigm, wife this, husband this. Yeah, but it's 2019. Where do you find a woman who's been molded in such a way that she can actually do that? Or where do you find a husband that's that responsible and emotionally controlled? Another problem that I was reading about this morning is that one of the major causes of relationship problems are men are emotionally immature. That's like considered one of the major. I knew that just because I've seen it in myself and seen it in others. But men don't act like men, they act like kids. And then the women get frustrated because the men should be controlled. And part of control is emotional control. So if I'm having a discussion with my wife and she says something that I think is unfair, and I don't know how to take it, my ego gets damaged, then I'll say I don't want to talk about it, or I'll attack her. So all those 4 things, criticism and the defensiveness, the condemnation, stonewalling, are really aspects of emotional immaturity for the woman also, but apparently it has a much more detrimental effect when the men are emotionally immature because they're supposed to be the leaders. So then we say, yeah, the woman should serve the husband, the woman should be submissive. And that's what men want. But the men have to think, why would a woman want to serve me if I act like a kid? How can she respect me if I act like a kid? So I am demanding this submission and service, and I'm acting like a kid. It doesn't make sense. Or I'm condemning her, or I'm criticizing her, I'm stonewalling when I don't listen to her when she talks, and I'm demanding respect. So we get into these problems because Shastra says this, but there's so many nuances to explain it that aren't explained there. It's just a general, here's a story. And so-and-so served so-and-so, even though so-and-so had a bad disposition and like that, and that's what a woman should do. But to expect that so you look at that story and say, okay, well, what's his name? Chaivana Muni was it Chaivana Muni? He made himself young. He was irritable. Maybe I'm getting stories mixed up. Anyway, and his wife served him, So, but in the practical, real world, to expect a woman to just be 100% dedicated and sustain that through a lifetime to a husband who just totally mistreats her, that's something maybe of a few hundred years ago, a different culture. So we have to take that in consideration. Like, when you get married, what are you dealing with? What was the training? What was the background? What was the experience? What did that woman grow up seeing? Did she grow up seeing her mother in that particular situation doing that? Or did she see a more equal relationship? So a man has to be sensitive to this. And he has to therefore treat his wife in a way that he's worthy of respect. Then it makes it easier for her. But to demand it, like Prabhupada says in the Gita, command respect, don't demand it. So why should we say in Grihastha life it should be any different? Well, because the Shastra says the woman should do this. But yes, just logically, how's she going to do it unless you're qualified? How can you expect that? It's unfair. So this is where we get tripped up when we look at Shastra in a very narrow way, and we don't look at it, it's like, realistically, that's impossible, or it's unlikely. It's not impossible, it's unlikely in most cases, unless a person was trained that way, that no matter what, no matter how my husband he can beat me, it doesn't matter, I'm his wife, I'm dedicated. Some people are trained like that. But nowadays, the kids that are growing up now or grew up in the last decade, or two even, they're not trained like that. And this is the whole generation gap. Like, parents expect their kids to be like them, but they're raised in a different generation. CEOs expect the new employees coming in to be like the employees who are now 50, 60 years old. They're different. They don't think like that. They're not just yes, yes. When the boss says to do something and it's the wrong thing, and it's wrong, you go to him and say, no, this is not right. This is not going to work. 30, 40 years ago, you just did it. You go, he's just paying me, he wants me to do it. I know it's not right, I do it. So the CEOs have had to learn how to adjust. So obviously we have to adjust to the present environment. So we have to take these things in consideration when we read Shastra, and Prabhupada took them into consideration. You can see that, how he made adjustments. So it's like, you want to be right, or do you want to have a good relationship? So, you want to have a whole movement of women who are dissatisfied, and new women come and see dissatisfied women and won't join, is because you've maintained a standard that not all women can follow, or it doesn't make sense to them. So I'm not saying we throw out the Vedic ideals, but we have to make adjustments that work. That's the point. And that's what Prabhupada did. He was attached to what worked. Obviously, there are certain principles you cannot change. But the details that you can, he changed as needed to make it work, because the goal is to be Krishna conscious. Not to be successful and in Maya, I'm very Vedic and totally in Maya. And you might think, well, how could you be Vedic and in Maya? You could be Vedic and not Krishna conscious. That's possible, We have a very Vedic marriage, and my wife is totally miserable. Okay, so, maybe the Vedic paradigm in your marriage is not the best thing. We have a very Vedic marriage, and my wife is very happy. Fantastic, Great, We sent my kid to Gurukul. He's like a rock star brahmachari. We sent my kid to Gurukul. He ran out the next day, freaked out. He said, I never want to do this. So, okay, different individuals, Prabhupada said kids should go to Gurukul. But then later on he said not all kids should go because they have to be Brahmanically inclined. So we just have to use common sense. Not like, no, Prabhupada said they all should go. Yeah, but your kid is totally miserable and he's just depressed. So why keep him there? He's like, he wants to be a Nobel laureate and discover, like how to make airplanes fly, generated by air power, and he's obsessed with that. He's probably doing it in his last life. And he's just bored in Gurukul because he's got an IQ of like 200, So, you have to adjust. And then you do your best. So, does that make sense?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I read a quotation of a quote from Srila Prabhupada that said that if you have like a wife that is going to help you in Krishna consciousness, it's not necessary that you take sannyas.
Mm-hmm.
this is like...
If you have a wife that helps you in Krishna consciousness, it's not necessary that you take sannyas. Also, if you and your wife are totally engaged in Krishna consciousness, then there may be no advantage in taking sannyas. There may be disadvantage. You take sannyas because there's an advantage. You're already renounced. So you take sannyas for preaching and for renunciation, but you're already renounced. Your kids are grown up. You've sold your house. You're living in a small place. You're living a simple life, or you're traveling and preaching with your wife. So then you have to question, well, what would be the advantage of being separate now? Maybe there would be, maybe there wouldn't. If there's not, then why do it? When we say a man should take sannyas, it means he should renounce attachment to material things. And a lot of our grihastas never had attachment in the first place. So Prabhupada said even to the young grihastas, you're already sannyas. They want to take sannyas. He said, you already are. You've given everything to Krishna. So why do you need to just leave your wife and kid? It doesn't make sense. Everybody in your family is Krishna conscious. Now you might say, well, look at Kardama. His son was God, and he took sannyas. So that was a different time and place, and different example. But Prabhupada, he didn't push people to take sannyas. They pushed him. But it's there in Shastra. But the idea is the ordinary person is materially attached, and you have to pull them out of it. But for many devotees, they're not materially attached. So you have to look at the advantage or disadvantage of taking sannyas. And we have many God brothers in their 70s, very Krishna conscious. They're married, and they may never take sannyas, and there may be other reasons that they decide for their service it's better to be married. Yes?
So,
you want me to take sannyas?
Your wife didn't give you a permission already.
None of my disciples have given me permission to take sannyas.
No, you're a wonderful example of a grihasta.
But more importantly, my wife has not given permission. So if she doesn't give permission, then...
No, but I want to say something. It's because I want to ask, for example, in my case, that I'm around 35. I'm trying to find a husband, but it's quite complicated or difficult or almost impossible.
Complicated, not impossible, complicated.
No, with Krishna wills everything is possible. That's
difficult, yeah.
But the thing is, for example, if by chance, I'm not going to talk about me, I'm going to talk about another person, whatever. If I'm already have 50 years, even if you're a woman or a man,
yeah.
It's necessary. In which position are you? Are you going to hope every day that you're going to find a husband or a wife, or you have to take sannyas, or I don't know. What is
what should you do if you're 50 years old and you haven't been married?
Mm-hmm.
And should you give up on the idea of being married?
No. You didn't give up. You're hoping that you're going
to... Oh, you're still going to be married.
But
should you give up the idea? Or should you do it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, there's two answers. Yeah, you shouldn't. But then you have to ask, what's going to happen if you don't? Are you going to end up destroying the universe because you're so dissatisfied, So that's the problem, what you should do according to Shastra and what is best for you may not always be the same. So you finally find a man, and he's 65, and people are saying, you don't know how long he's going to live, and and you say, yeah, I know, but he's Krishna conscious, and I think it'll be better for my Krishna consciousness, and we're not going to have children, and we're just going to preach together, and I'm on my own, and I find it difficult, and I have no protection, and even if he dies, at least there's a house there I can have, and so you have to look at it according to the reality of your world. A lot of times we look at it according to what Shastra says, but then we can't do it, and then it backfires. And then then you're 58, and you're end up marrying a 35-year-old guy because you can't find anybody to marry. And that would be bad. Right? I can only speak from experience of things I've seen, and this is what happens. But it's usually the 65-year-old guy marries the 35. If you're 50, you might be too old for the 65. You might have to find like an 80-year-old. And what your question brings up is the reality of how messed up society is. I mean, it's so much worse than it was 50, 60 years ago. And how hard it is to find a good husband and the ramifications of it. And so we want to be Krishna conscious, and as we're navigating through Kali Yuga, having to make adjustments. And if you just want to strictly follow Shastra, then yeah, at 50, it's, even at 40, even your age is like, you're too old to get married, should be a grandmother by now. You should have had kids when you were 14. So that's the Vedic, So then you have to address everything in terms of, in your situation, practically, what's going to be the best, socially and spiritually. And nowadays in ISKCON, usually we just respect people for their decisions. And if you get married at 50 and he's 65 and you're both Krishna conscious, and most people will respect you. A few diehards will chastise you or not talk to you. But most devotees will just respect that this is, the situation you're in. This was the right guy to marry, and you should have found him, 30 years ago, but you didn't, and so you're taking a gamble and hoping he lives, to be 80, 85. So, then you'll be 70, he's 85, that's closer than 50, 65. Ultimately the goal is to go back to Godhead, and how you get there, it may not be the ideal Vedic path as it was done traditionally, but still, if you can get there without doing anything sinful, then that's the criteria.
So, what is better? To try to find a husband that is not Krishna conscious and then become in Krishna conscious, or find a man that it's like it's a devotee but it's not the best one?
I don't know if you heard that question. A moral dilemma. Find a man who's not Krishna conscious and try to make him Krishna conscious. Or marry a man who's Krishna conscious but not really a good devotee. Which is better? They're both bad. And it's hard to answer the question because I don't have the two men in front of me
But I can bring you to everyone.
To interview them. Generally, from what I've seen, well, it depends. It depends on you, what you need. Like some women will find it difficult. Some women will find it difficult to respect a man who's not Krishna conscious, right? He might be an intelligent person, moral and very together and successful, but maybe he's not Krishna conscious, and you can't, and that's just something that makes it hard to respect him, and so you'll feel superior to him, and it could create a problem for him and for you. So that's a consideration. And it's the same consideration of the man who is a devotee but not that Krishna conscious. So generally women will have a difficult time respecting a man if he's not Krishna conscious, or more Krishna conscious than she is, or at least as Krishna conscious as she is. So you have to ask yourself that, can I respect a man? You might say, yeah, well, if he's materially together, I could respect him. And then you have to ask the next question, well, he's not going to be the person that I talk about Krishna consciousness with because he's not a devotee. So how important is it to be living with a person who you can talk to Krishna about Krishna consciousness with, or at least who's philosophical, or maybe he likes watching football games on Saturday and he's not going to participate in spiritual programs. He likes to go to movies, and he's going to ask you to go to movies. You're going to say no, and he's going to say, well, what kind of relationship? I want to go to this party, this movie. So you have to look at things realistically. You won't have that problem with a man who's a devotee, generally, hopefully. But you need to you need to investigate. You know, he's not so Krishna. How not so Krishna conscious is he? You know what? You know, does he like talking about Krishna? It's just he doesn't get up early. You know, does he play video games all day? You know, there's so many questions. So you know, and men, you don't want to make it difficult for women. So the more mature you are, the more Krishna conscious you are, the more empathetic and so on, the easier it is for the wife. Women naturally want to serve, but sometimes men make it difficult for them because you lose respect. And so, you know, I think this is a problem. I mean, I know it is, at least amongst certain sectors of ISKCON, that they think a woman just has to be a certain way no matter how the man is. Okay, you know, on paper, that looks good, and that would be great if she could be. But in the real world, most women can't, unless the man commands respect, then she can. So to expect her to respect you when you're not acting in a respectful way, respectfully, that is hope against hope in most cases, and that's not logical and intelligent. And so the man has a responsibility, just as like the guru has a responsibility. How can a guru think my disciples should just do whatever I want? And he doesn't even have good sadhana, doesn't know shastra. You see him out playing golf, and you know, etc. How's a disciple going to respect him? It just makes it hard. So the more Krishna conscious the guru is, the easier it is for the disciple to surrender, because they always see he's exemplary, and so their faith increases, and it's very easy. If they lose faith, it's hard to surrender, because they see, well, he doesn't. I never seen him chant his rounds. I don't. Doesn't, you know, when I'm around him, I get the feeling he's having trouble, or I don't feel Krishna coming from him. That makes it hard for the disciple. So every guru who's worth his, what did they say? Worth his, there's a saying. You're worth your what? What is it? We don't have any Americans here in the audience, so they don't know the saying. Worth his hay or something, I forget. We'll understand that one of my services is to be exemplary and to have good sadhana and be always engaged in service. And then it's very easy for the disciples, because they all do. Like Prabhupada he was so surrendered to Krishna. We all surrendered because of his surrender. You know, if he was, you know, taking vacations to the Bahamas and lying on the beach, we would do that also. As soon as Prabhupada drank 7-Up, it was like, oh, everybody started drinking 7-Up. You know, it's like just waiting for your guru to, like, you know, go to the movies so you can go to the movies. Yeah. So, you know, men should understand this. Yes.
So, this protection, I was just thinking that 5 elements, or, you know, protection.
5 different kinds of people.
So I was just, you know, taking it on me and thinking that, okay, in my situation, that, you know, it basically applies to everything. I have kids, I have wife, I have an elder mother, I have, you know, of course there are cows and Brahmins in the society. So it brings a lot of responsibility, you know, in my situation. And when the element of protection is there, then on a subtle level there is that, okay, I have to give protection, then there could be a feeling of superiority, like, okay,
I'm the protector.
I'm the protector.
Yeah.
So how to give protection without having that feeling, or
well, let's say your uncle Joe Patel dies. You're not a Patel. Your uncle, what's his name? What's your uncle's last name?
Uncle's Jain.
Jain. And it's his first name?
Raj.
Raj Jain. Your uncle Raj Jain dies, and little did you know, he was a multi-millionaire, and he leaves you 2 million, not rupees, US dollars. And now you can use that money She does so many things. Build a temple, publish books, distribute prasadam, start an educational institute, support existing programs. And so you go to Vrindavan, VIT, sign a check, here's 100,000, do what you need. You go to MIT, 100,000. Go to Vrindavan Temple, here's $500,000 to fix up your, they're knocking down that Gurukul building, they're going to rebuild it, I think, to build that new building. They're building a new Gurukul. You go to Mayapur, here's $500,000. Let's say he's given you like 10 million, so you can give $500,000. You give $500,000 to TOVP like that. But you understand this is a gift that was given to you, which gives you facility to do this service. So you're not proud because it's just a gift. So in relation to your question about how not to become proud when you're giving protection, if you're in a position karmically where you can give protection, it's your duty. And so let's say I need you to lift something. Nobody can lift it. You're the only one who can lift it. So you lift it, put it in the car. You're not thinking, hey, everybody's so weak here. I'm so strong. Look at me. You're just thinking, oh, I could do some service. But nobody could lift it. I'm happy to do this because I used to lift weights. I'm strong. Right? Isn't that how you'd think? You wouldn't get proud. It's the same thing. This is just the ability I have, so let me use it. So what Krishna has given to me. So I should use it. It's my duty to use it. I have it. I've been given this money or given this strength or whatever. I'm a good manager. Okay. And then we understand, like, you may be a good manager, I may not be, but I have my own skill set that's different from yours. So it doesn't make you better or it doesn't make me better. It just makes us different. And so these are the abilities Krishna has given us. So we don't become proud, we're just thankful and we can use it. At least that's how I think. Thank you, Krishna, for giving this to me. I can use it. And if we become proud, maybe he'll take it away. So, protection is your duty and you're in a position to protect. Why would you become proud? Like if you protect cows, you become proud? Of course not. I'm the best cow protector. You can call me Gopal. No. By Krishna's grace, I grew up on a farm. My uncle, Raj, he showed me how to take care of cows. Now I've joined ISKCON and I help the Goshalas and I just got promoted in my job, so I get an extra 10,000 a year. I'm going to give that to the cows. He's just grateful you could do that. Krishna has given you these things and you can use them in his service, so you're grateful. Katie says, how to deal with effeminate men. What do you mean? In a relationship or just on the street or in the temple or...
I don't know what is the meaning of this word.
Effeminate means feminine. Men who are feminine. Men who have a feminine nature. Yeah. So while Katie's answering, we'll read Chitra's comment. Married life has brought me closer to Krishna because my husband is a very good devotee. Can't imagine a happy marriage life married to someone who can't teach me about Krishna consciousness. In my opinion, all you lady devotees, ask yourself, will this man make me closer to Krishna? If the answer is no, because probably I would spend my life trying to make him Krishna conscious, don't take the marriage step. That's her opinion. How to deal with an effeminate man in a relationship? Well, I think that is an easy answer. Before you go into a relationship, you have to determine what kind of partner will be best for you. And some women would be happy to have a man who's effeminate, who would be willing to let them take more charge of the marriage and so forth. And some woman wouldn't, so it depends on what works for you. I don't know necessarily what you mean by effeminate, but if you mean traditional male qualities, right? A man doesn't have it, he's He's a little weak, he's indecisive, he's more emotional. Then you have to decide if that's the kind of man you want. I like those chairs.
They're amazing, no?
Where'd you get them? You made them? Amazon. How much?
They were like 35 a piece.
Can you? I want to show everybody these chairs. These chairs, oh, you can't see it. And you sit on the floor, and they're cushioned. And how does it go back? Well, you have to.
You put it again, and then
It goes back, and you can go any.
and yeah, you have to go all the way back first.
And then you can go up, and it'll lock. They're nice. Available on Amazon for only $35, and you can put things in the pocket, like your pen or donations or whatever. She said, and Katie said, not just the qualities but the skills. Like he doesn't know how to fix houses. Yeah, you should definitely want to get a man who knows how to fix houses, right? Unless you live in India, because it only costs like $2 to hire someone. Oh. Get it on Amazon. Nice chair. Yeah. The answer to your question, Katie, would be a more general than specific answer. Sometimes people get married and they discover a lot about their partner that they don't like, and then sometimes, unfortunately, they think, well, if I would have known this, I probably wouldn't have married them. So you want to figure that out before rather than after. Now that I know this about you, I like it, or now that I know this about you, I don't like it. So now I don't think this relationship will work because I need a man who is like this or like that. So, do your investigation beforehand and know about yourself. And know what you need and want. And the last thing I would say, which I always say, if you have any things to heal in your own psychology and emotional life, you should heal them before you marry, because they'll come up and they can create big problems in your marriage. How to deal with the situation where the temple community is so close-knit that a woman sees all the devotees as her brother or uncles, and it feels wrong to her to even think of marrying someone. Yeah, well, Chanaka Pandit said you see every woman should see every man as son, except her husband, and every man should see every woman as mother, except her wife. So that's okay. You'll see all of them as brothers or sons or fathers, except one. And you'll say, who's that one? You'll know. You'll know, because you won't see him that way anymore. Hare Krishna. Okay, we have to stop here because, can you find out if
Breakfast is ready.
it's ready?
Yes.
We have to stop because I have to take breakfast and I have a call in a little while. And we're going to have
11 to 2 o'clock.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, we have 5 minutes. At 11 o'clock we're going to do a marriage workshop. The role of men and women. And so if you want to attend that, I can broadcast it. It's 11 Indian time, so it could be a few minutes later, right?
11 here.
11 here. Today's daylight savings, and now so the daylight savings time here is 9:05. So when I say 11, I mean in 2 hours, or 1 hour and 55 minutes. So I'll broadcast it. Just for better or for worse.
Yes.
And I'll be, it's interesting because when you look at the research, the role of men and women nowadays is very similar. You go to a more traditional, you say this is male, this is female. Okay, of course that's natural. But nowadays the roles are a little, I don't want to say compromised, but they're more similar in certain areas of the relationship. Because the women are raised with the same education and and same opportunities as men, so they're more equal. So the relationships don't work like this; they work more like this. There's a lot, not all entirely, but not in every aspect, but in many aspects. The definite relationships, communication. It can't be one way, and so forth. Can't be the one partner listens, one doesn't. One's nice, one isn't. One is responsible, one isn't, obviously. So, okay, I guess there's no more questions. So, if you want to check us out in 2 hours, we're going to have a class for 3 hours. There may be some exercises. So, but ladies, get your husbands to come. Because, as we just said, emotionally, if your husband's not emotionally mature, it's a major cause of problems in a marriage. And guys, you definitely should come. You have a big responsibility in the marriage. You can make it easier for your wife or difficult. Ladies, you can make it easier for your husband or difficult. And I was reading this morning about so many of us have traumas from early in our life, whether our childhood or previously, and we don't even realize they're traumas, but they show up in irrational behaviors, like getting upset about something that's not that upsetting, or becoming overly defensive about something that you shouldn't be defensive for, attacking or becoming angry. That you see a lot of this. You see a lot of this on the internet, or people are very angry about something, and it's just they haven't healed. They've been traumatized. They haven't healed, and they find it difficult to be objective about situations because there's so much anger or frustration or hurt or whatever. So I found it interesting that it's been found that a lot of us have traumas and we're acting them out. We're not even aware they're traumas, but you can see by how you act out. You're like strong reactions to something that you shouldn't have strong reactions to. So that's very important. If you're going to be married, it's not fair to the person you're marrying to not heal those, because it'll make it difficult. And if you're married to someone who has traumas, you have to be understanding and not attack them for acting that way, that they're responding. This is why they're doing something, because it could be a trauma or it could just be a conditioning. This is how they've always done it. Or there's a fear because of some kind of mistreatment or abandonment or whatever. And, this world's pretty traumatic in general, just growing up, I was traumatized in school. I hated it. I don't think I have PTSD from school, but, it's like they say when there's trauma, in a certain situation, you'll react a specific way to a specific thing. It may not be global, that there's anything wrong with you, but one specific thing, because it reminds you of something, horrible event. It's like, I can't do that. It's like, why? No, I can't. And nobody can understand why. And then you have to conclude there must have been some traumatic event in your life. Yeah, because when I was 6, we went here and I fell down this mountain. I can't go mountain climbing. Oh, okay. So, you have to understand. Kelsey says, how can we balance devotional service outside the home with our household activities when our SO is not involved in temple activities? SO, that's significant other, yeah. You have to do what you have to do. And that's just, there's this, like we were talking yesterday, sometimes there's a reality of our life and we just don't want to admit it's a reality because we want it to be some other way. And then when you don't admit it's a reality, you don't deal with it practically because you're hoping it'll be something else, or even imagining it's something different than it is. So if your husband's not that involved in temple activities, he's not that involved in temple activities, and you can encourage him and inspire him as best you can. You can introduce him to other men who can encourage and inspire, and then see what happens. And whatever happens, it's just you have to accept it, and then you go ahead in your own life, in your own Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada said, an advanced devotee doesn't allow anyone or anything to deter his bhakti. So that's the idea. Don't allow anyone or anything to deter your bhakti. That's all you can do. And we had this discussion yesterday. How to deal with a spouse who lies about their sadhana and service? Oh, Katie, I think you should beat him up until he tells the truth. What do you think? Don't lie to me about your service. Yeah. Find out in advance if a person lacks integrity. That means if someone's lying about their sadhana service, it means they're afraid of you, that you'll disrespect them, or afraid of people in general, that they'll be disrespected, or they're unwilling to be honest. So if you understand where it's coming from, maybe you can help them. And don't create an environment where if they're honest with you, you're going to attack them. That's why one reason people may not be honest, because they feel they'll be attacked or judged. So if you're judging and attacking someone, then better he just lies to you, then you won't judge and attack him. So you may create a situation where you're actually forcing him to be dishonest. And as far as Kelsey, we had a discussion yesterday with Kelsey and another devotee, how sometimes, we don't like the way things are, and we're trying to adjust, but we can't adjust because they are the way they are. It's like Prabhupada said, straightening a dog's tail. You're trying to straighten it, but it's not straight. It'll never be straight unless you tie a stick to it, but that's artificial. So some things are the way they are, and we just have to acknowledge that. Okay? And then you can deal with it more practically and be more, this is how it is, I have to accept it. And maybe it will change, maybe it won't, but I have to make best use of the way it is in my own life. Okay, so we'll see you in 2 hours, or 2 hours and 50 minutes, 2 hours and 48 minutes and 23 seconds. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.